Canon actually released just at the 11th hour a list of SEPA ratings for RF lenses with and without their own optical stabilization when you use them in combination with the built-in image stabilization, the IBIS system, if you will, on the R5 and the R6 cameras. And just real quickly, I want to say parenthetically, the IBIS system in the R6 and the R5 is identical. It's not that one performs better than the other or whatever. I don't recall I don't recall what the number of stops correction officially the SEPA rating was on the 28 to 70 millimeter f2 lens. It's definitely going to be an improvement over what you could do hand holding without stabilization, because of course that lens did not have optical stabilization in the lens itself. Real quick, if I can just take a second here, because I know that just in the past day, in the past 24 hours and change, there's been a lot of discussion online and so on, not just on P&H, but throughout the industry about the IBIS system and what'll it do, will it work? And, we've tried to be transparent and clear about that. But again, in the preliminary information, there's only so much you can get out. So let me just real quickly give a 30,000 foot overview. With the two new cameras, the R6 and the R5, there is built-in 5-axis image stabilization that literally moves the imaging sensor. It's a true IBIS system. It's not digital stabilization that's moving the electronic image on the sensor or whatever. Let's be clear about that. Any lens you attach, whether it's an EF lens from the DSLR system with an adapter or an RF lens that just simply doesn't have optical stabilization. Any lens without stabilization, you can turn it on in the menu. The camera's smart enough to know when you attach a lens, okay, does it or does it not have image stabilization? If it doesn't, a menu item appears in the red shooting menu, image stabilization mode. You can go in there and turn stabilization on, and you will get a stabilized effect. And it'll definitely be an improvement over what you would have gotten without it. Now, the degree of stabilization is going to depend to a large extent on the lens we're talking about and so on. The number of stops correction is going to vary depending on the lens's characteristics and that kind of thing, even though it doesn't have stabilization in it in this example. But the IBIS system works very nicely, and it's going to expand what you can do with your lenses handheld for stills and for video shooting in any lens you attach without stabilization. Okay, so that's one. Number two is if you take an EF lens or an EFS lens with the mount adapter that has optical stabilization, the system right away is smart enough to know when you attach that lens, yes, this lens has image stabilization built into it. So now there isn't a menu item in the red shooting menu. Instead, the lens's own IS switch, its on-off switch, now dictates whether or not you have a combination of the lens's optical stabilization and the IBIS stabilization working simultaneously. Turn it on, they both work. Turn it off, they both shut off. There is no way to go in and turn just the IBIS on or just the lens's stabilization on. It's either they both go on in tandem or they're both off. With them both on, you are going to get superior correction performance compared to what you would have gotten with that lens's optical IS by itself. So once again, you've added even more corrective capability to lenses just randomly. Lenses like the EF 70 to 200 f2.8 with image stabilization, the 100 to 400 L series lens with image stabilization, or any other IS lens, regardless of its focal length. Then finally, the third possibility is an RF lens that has optical stabilization. Now you are going to get a different combination of the way the IBIS system with the 5-axis stabilization and the lens's stabilization work together. And the engineers call this coordinated IS. Once again, you're going to turn it on or off with the switch on the lens. The camera's smart enough to know, A, it's an RF lens, and B, whether or not it has its own optical stabilization. When you do turn an RF lens with IS on, the stabilization on, you're going to get the most powerful combination of stabilization, combining what the optical IS would do and the stabilization in the camera can do, of certainly anything we've ever done. And we think this is going to be class leading stabilization in the industry. Again, that's with an RF lens that has its own IS, combining it with the built-in IBIS system in these two cameras. It is some potent stuff.